Introducing Home Care Plus, a new subscription service from Lowe's that helps make life easier by giving members a hand with home maintenance. Let Lowe's tackle the tasks you keep meaning to do, like electric dryer vent cleaning, replacing hard-to-reach light bulbs, and more. Subscribe to Home Care Plus for just $99 a year and consider your to-do list done. Members get more at Lowe's. Available in select zip codes only. Cancel anytime. Non-refundable fee. Product purchase required. Terms and service restrictions apply. Details at lowes.com/terms. Subject to change.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Hello, folks. This is Steve Moore. This is the More Money Show. Thank you so much for joining on this weekend in April. So glad to have so many listeners around the country joining the show. You're the ones who make this show possible. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I always say that I'm not the smartest radio talk show host, but I have the smartest audience. And I really believe that. And I know that's true, by the way, because we take listeners almost every a week on this show, and just hearing the incredible insights of the people who are listening, we learn a lot from you. And so thank you so much for joining. We've got an exciting show coming up. Please stick with us. But I want to just start with some opening comments about what is going on with the economy and what is going on with respect to our money, because the whole purpose of the show is for you to make more money. And incidentally, if you want to make more money, you ought to be getting our Unleash Prosperity hotline, which is absolutely free. It costs you nothing. I'm not selling anything here, folks. By the way, there's no advertising either. So it's just chock full with information on politics, on finance, on the economy, how you can make more money. Go to unleashprosperity.com, unleashprosperity.com, and sign up for free for the hotline, and we'll email that to you 5 mornings a week. Look, people in the White House are reading this. People in Congress are reading it. People in the Senate are reading it. I know we've got a lot of major CEOs who find really good information here, and you can too. And I always say, if you want to be the smartest person in the room, and who doesn't want to be the smartest person in the room, read the hotline every morning, and you will be conversant on all the major issues. So starting with a couple things. One is I wanted to talk a little bit about I hope you all got your taxes done by April 15th. As you know, that is the day everyone's taxes are due. And by the way, I've told this joke in the past, but for those of you who are new listeners, I think I told this last April 15th, but what is the difference between a tax collector and a taxidermist? And of course, the answer to that question is the taxidermist only takes your skin. And of course, that's the way I felt when I finished my taxes this year, because I had to pay a lot of money. And I'm not rich. I mean, I'm doing pretty well financially, but I ain't, multimillionaire. But boy, did I pay taxes through the wazoo. We've got to do something about downsizing the size of government, which in my opinion is twice as large as it should be. That's Moore's economic rule, which is we should be reducing the size of government, every government, local government, state government, and the federal government by half. And I truly believe we could get better services, whether it's the schools, whether it's the playgrounds, whether it's the safety of our streets, whether it's our national defense, whether it is the parks, whether it is our healthcare. All of these things would be, I think, superior service and superior outcomes if we cut the size of government. I really believe this is the greatest danger to America, more than Iran, more than Russia. It is the size of our government, which is out of control. And I'm not blaming either party. I'm blaming both parties, both of them, Republicans and Democrats. They have no fiscal conscience. We're seeing right now, I'm sorry, I'm disgusted by this. And I know some of my listeners may disagree with me on this. But here we're going to spend $200 billion more in the days ahead, maybe as much as $250 billion for the military. And look, I want a strong military. Of course I do. As my old friend Phil Graham used to say, when the lion lays down with the lamb, I want to be the lion, not the lamb. And I want the United States to be the lion as well. But come on, there's no more wasteful agency in government than the Pentagon. And it's also true that if we're going to spend all this money, and look, I'm not qualified to say how much money is needed by the Pentagon. I'm not a military expert by any means. I'm an economist. But I will tell you this, why not pay as you go? Why not say, okay, we need $200 billion. This is a national emergency to make sure that we bring peace and prosperity to the Middle Eastern region and stop the killing there. Remember, this is a regime that's killing tens of thousands of its own people. But if we need to do that, then why not take the money out of all these social programs and say, sorry, right now that's not the highest priority. It's not the highest priority right now to be giving money to Somalian-run daycare centers, most of which are probably fraudulent. And so that's my view. Okay, you need 250 billion more. That's a lot of money. What? Billion, 250 billion more. Okay, why don't we cut every other program by about 8 to 9%, and that would pay for it? That seems to make a lot of sense to me. Incidentally, I have another idea. I know this is controversial, but I believe what we could do if we need $200 billion, and I'm very anti-tax, but you've got one area of the economy that's never been taxed, which is our universities, and they have almost $1 trillion in their massive endowments, right? This is money that was given to them tax-free, never taxed by millionaires and billionaires. And why not put maybe a 15 or 20% excise tax on those endowments and then use that money to pay for the war? I know the university presidents would be in favor of that. I mean, they're patriots, right? I'm joking, folks, but that's what we ought to do because there's no reason that universities should not pay taxes, but everybody else does. So that is my opening riff, folks. We need to restore fiscal responsibility. I'm sorry when I hear Bernie Sanders and AOC and Elizabeth Warren and all these others say, "Oh my God, we have to raise taxes on the rich, more money spent, more taxes on rich people." We tried that in New York and Connecticut and New Jersey. It didn't work so well. By the way, one of my guests coming on soon is Jonathan Williams, who does the Rich States, Poor States result, and he'll go document why raising tax rates does not work. But we are not going to tax our way out of these fiscal problems. We are not. In fact, I would make the case that if we raise taxes by $1 trillion, you know what the government's going to do? Do you think they're going to save it and use it to reduce the deficit? Anybody out there raising their hand? I don't think they will. If we give the government $1 trillion more, guess what they're going to do? They're going to spend it. You know they will. I know they will. Only a dim-witted person who doesn't know how government works thinks they're going to use the money to save it and pay off our debt. So the only way you can get this debt down, this is my sermon from the top of the hill, and I'm not saying I'm Jesus, by the way, but what I'm trying to tell you is the only way we can bring our debt down and prosperity back is to do two things. One is to cut taxes and reduce regulation and grow our economy, and we have the capability of doing that. And the second thing we need to do is take a sledgehammer or a chainsaw to government and cut it down. And Trump is doing some of that. He has, I give him credit. He's reduced he's draining the swamp, but not as fast enough as I'd like to see. So we will be right back, folks. We've got a great show lined up. This is the More Money Show, and we will be right back in 2 minutes.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Now streaming. Disney Plus invites you to go behind the scenes with Taylor Swift in an exclusive 6-episode docuseries.
I wanted to give something to the fans that they didn't expect. The only thing left is to close the book.
The end of an era. And don't miss Taylor Swift, The Eras Tour, the final show, featuring for the first time the Tortured Poets Department. Now streaming, only on Disney Plus.
More Money Show with Steve Moore.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show. I'm economist Steve Moore. Thank you so much for tuning in this weekend. My first guest of the afternoon is a colleague, a friend, a brilliant economic and political analyst at ALEC. You all know ALEC. They represent free market, conservative state legislators around the country, something like 2,000 to 3,000 members, a really invaluable organization to promote good policy around the country. So Jonathan Williams is, well, what is your title, Jonathan? I know you've been with ALEC for a long time. I think you're vice president, or I know you've run the Fiscal Policy Center for years. What is your title over there these days, Jonathan?
Oh, yeah. Hi, Steve. Thanks for having me. It's I'm now president and chief economist at ALEC, and just been a pleasure for all these 19 years now at ALEC to work alongside you and Arthur Laffer on this incredible work that we put together with Rich States, Poor States.
Yeah. So one of the things, people may have heard of ALEC because it had been controversial a number of years ago. Some of the left-wing groups really went after ALEC in a very aggressive way, which I thought was really ironic because the other group that represents state legislators is the National Conference of State Legislators. They are very liberal, and they get all their most of their money from state budgets. But you're totally privately funded. You don't take taxpayer money.
Well, right. I mean, it's not something we go out and get appropriations from state governments to operate ALEC operations. This is what's one of the key differential factors there between us and other groups. And we like to practice what we preach with the free market and ask those who care about these ideas of free markets, limited government, and federalism, the ALEC principles, to contribute to ALEC. And that's how we continue to grow as an organization.
How many members do you have?
Yeah, we have about 2,000 members across the state.
That's amazing.
You said just Republicans and Democrats, but free market leaning folks that want to make their states better across the board.
And you've got a lot of, when I talked to your president there, Lisa Nelson, who's done an amazing job as well, she says that you have, a few hundred former state legislators and members of ALEC who are now in higher office.
Well, that's a great point. A lot of people think of ALEC as a state policy and member organization, but it's more than that in that we do have 114 members of the current Congress who are ALEC alumni members from when they served as state lawmakers and now have moved, I guess, up or down, depending on how you look at it, to Washington, D.C., into Congress. And but no, it's a great story because as you and I were there just this week, Steve, to release the new Rich States, Poor States, we had the whole Utah delegation of Congress. They're all 4 U.S. House members with us. They weren't all ALEC legislators because some of them, of course, weren't legislators, but nonetheless, I mean, bringing these great state-based solutions to Washington, you have to ask yourself the question, why doesn't Washington pay attention to all the success that's happening in the states? And of course, we help connect the dots.
Yeah, you do. And you're a great training ground for great people who then move on to the House, the Senate, maybe governors, and maybe president. I wouldn't be surprised if we have a former ALEC member who is president of the United States one of these days. Okay, so Jonathan, let's get down to it. You just mentioned that you were in Washington this week with a huge number of the Utah delegation. Now, you put together with me and with Art Laffer, we've been doing this for, 16, 17? How many years have we done Rich State, Poor State?
Yeah, that's just 19 now 19. As of this year. Wow. Incredible. We're almost at 2 decades, right? I mean, we started when we were really young, I guess, Steve.
Right. Well, it's an amazing report. And what we do in Rich States, Poor States, and everybody, you can get that, right, just by going to the ALEC website? You can pull it down? That's
right, ALEC.org and richstatespoorstates.org, which is a great microsite that kind of lets you go way deeper into the weeds on the policy as well.
So the report, basically, folks, it's a good report to look through, and you could just flip through it and see the pictures, but also look at the rankings of your state. I know we have affiliates, Jonathan, throughout the country, everywhere from California through the Midwest and Chicago and St. Louis and Kansas City, and we've got up into Maine and down into Georgia. So we have people listening to the show across the country. And so I'm sure they're very interested in how their states are doing, and we will get that information to you in a minute, folks. So you got to hold on a minute because I know we'll have a drum roll for that. But this is the most amazing thing about this report, by the way. Tell us how you do it. What are you looking at? Like tax rates, how much they spend, how much they borrow. It's a real kind of pro-taxpayer view of what states should be doing. What are the criteria you use to measure which states are best?
Well, we use 15 different factors that we have equally weighted throughout the course of these 19 years. And there are things like tax rates, which we know obviously matter a ton for why Americans are voting with their feet and going from state to state, why businesses are locating in one location versus another. We look at regulation. We look at labor policy, things like minimum wage and right to work status of the state. We look at overall the size of state government and how big a government is with how many government employees, let's say. All things that matter for economic economic growth. I mean, you know this better than anybody, Steve. You and Arthur came to us with this idea nearly 2 decades ago to say, wouldn't it be great if we had this tool to help state lawmakers measure themselves versus the other 49? And that's the key, right, is you have a consistent measurement. The great Peter Drucker would always say the things that you measure, you're going to succeed at improving at, right? Because you know that you're immediately stacking up against all your other states across the country. And states can only get away with so much bad policy. As you know, Steve, with these laboratories of democracy and this idea of federalism, is states can't build walls to keep people in if their policies are bad enough. And that's one of the great things about our report. The other thing I'll mention on the rankings, and this is really, really key for state legislators out there, is we know there's all kinds of different groups that do rankings today. And I think that's generally pretty positive. But the thing about rich states, poor states, above and beyond the fact that all these 15 factors really matter for why some states are growing and some states are losing, the other thing that's so important is that all 15 of those factors are things that the men and women who serve in Harrisburg, in Nashville, in Lansing, in Phoenix, as state lawmakers, they directly control every single year, and they can make changes for better or for worse, depending on how they would like to change their policy environment.
Okay, so let's get down to it then. We will be taking a break in a few minutes, but we can get through some of this, and I'm going to hold Jonathan over to the second segment, because this is so important, folks, and I know we have people listening to this show probably in about 40 of the 50 states. So let us start with the winner. Who was the big winner this year? Who was number one?
Well, when we were in Washington this week, we had about 40 legislators from the great state of Utah that were with us, including the Senate President and the Speaker of the House. Great free market leaders. They are number one again. And Steve, as you know, this is a story that's not a new story for rich states, poor states. Utah has been number one for all 19 editions of Rich States, Poor States for Economic Outlook. An incredible success story at the top of the rankings.
Well, what do they do?
They've done so many things right.
Yeah. What does just very quickly? What does Utah do right? Why are they number one?
Well, I think in the essence of it is they are good on policy across the board, but they're always looking to improve and not fall behind by standing still, as we say, is always a risk. But they've done a flat tax. They've really gotten to the heart of property tax problems with their truth in taxation law. They've look at the government pensions, the unfunded liabilities that you and I have talked about for a long time. They've gotten to that issue. And there's so many great free market things that they feature, including school choice. So, I mean, Utah is just an amazing success story.
Who's number two?
Number two is a state that is a state that Tennessee that moved up tremendously last year from 12 to 2. But one of the states, of course, without a personal income tax, something that you've talked about forever, Steve, is one of the very most important things you can do as a state is reduce your personal income tax and eliminate it if at all possible. And Tennessee, of course, where Arthur Laffer resides today after leaving California, as so many Americans have, continues to move the ball forward, and just an incredible growth story with all the in-migration and new businesses that they've seen. If you've been to Nashville, anybody recently, the city booming. Changes every time I go. You almost don't recognize it. It's growing so quickly.
So we're going to take a quick break. Give us the top 5 or 6. And then when we come back, by the way, Jonathan, we're going to have to look at the states on the other side of the spectrum.
Yeah. So you go from there to Idaho, which has tried to keep up with Utah for many years, done some great things on regulatory reform. North Carolina, number 4, a great turnaround. Wow,
North Carolina, because I noticed they've had a big migration of people into North Carolina, so it's a good policy state, huh?
It is. And they are a key state in that they became a flat tax state. They got rid of their death tax under Governor Pat McCrory. And when conservatives took over the legislature, their business tax, as you know, is going to 0 on corporate income tax by the end of the decade. And so it's a powerhouse in a very difficult region, competing against states like Florida and Tennessee.
Okay. And just very quickly, who's number 5?
Number 5, Arizona, perennially top 10 state, continues to do very well.
All right. So those are the top 5. Let's just go through it again. We got Utah, we've got North Carolina, we've got Idaho, is Florida in that top 5? No, they're probably
Florida's top 10. Yes,
top 10. Okay. All right, folks, when we get back, we're going to talk about the sore thumbs of the states and the states that do it wrong. And unfortunately, one of those states is the state where this show is home to. But we'll be right back. This is The More Money Show.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. This is The More Money Show. I'm going to finish my conversation with a good friend and a top economist in the country. That is Jonathan Williams with ALEC. If you're not familiar with ALEC, they are one of the top organizations in America, if not the top organizations, dealing with state policy issues, dealing with the state legislators who make the laws, and everywhere from Albany to Sacramento to Springfield, all around the country. So, Jonathan, you were telling us before we took our break that the top state was Utah. I think you said that that you had Tennessee up there near the top of the list, and Arizona and Idaho, and these are states that do it right, including Florida and Texas. I know they're in the top 10. By the way, Tennessee, Texas, and Florida, as you know, Jonathan, all have something in common, which is they have no income tax. That's a huge advantage that they have over the rest of the country. But now let's talk about the sore losers, the ones who just can't seem to get out of the bottom of the barrel. And why don't you give us the state in the country that has the worst economic environment?
Well, you're right. They've been stuck at the bottom of the barrel for almost every edition of Rich States, Poor States, and that is the state of New York. Not a surprise to any of the listeners.
We're based
there
in New York.
In New York City,
this is a New York station. You know, this is WABC in New York, but we have affiliates around the country. I mean, it just breaks the heart of a lot of our listeners to hear that New York is, have they been 50? How many years have they been last?
Oh, I mean, nearly every edition. I think there was 1 or 2 years Bernie Sanders, Vermont, caught them at 50th, and New York promptly got that designation back.
But, you know, Kathy Hochul, the governor, is now saying maybe they should have a new tax on millionaires. That's not going to help. I mean, it just seems like they do so much wrong. And then you've got this crazy mayor of New York City who talks about the warm embrace of socialism. And I don't know if you saw this week that he's talking about spending $30 million to open government-run grocery stores. I mean, this is pretty weird stuff.
Well, it sure is. And, you know, the proof's in the pudding, as we like to say, because you look at how many Americans have voted with their feet away from the state of New York in the last even 10 years. And that's nearly 2 million people over 10 years have left New York for one of the other 49 states. And think about the tax revenue that means that leaves. So, I mean, the comments the other day from Governor Hochul, who I believe was giving remarks down in Florida, basically begging businesses to come back into the state of New York because you need the revenue. I mean, give me a break. She's the one that's been at the helm as they've passed the policies that have driven these very entrepreneurs out of the state of New York, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's so true. And now they're talking about raising taxes again. And so I think they want to solidify their status as the worst state in the country with respect to economics. It's sad. Look, I worked at New York for many years. I was at the Wall Street Journal. I love New York City. It's the Empire State, but they just can't seem to get it right. And it's bad, poor leadership that's really caused these problems. Now, is California number 49? Who's 49?
Well, 49 is New Jersey, which is an all-time low for that state as well. They've always been generally in the bottom 5, but New Jersey continues to double down on the tax increase and just spending philosophy. And if there's a common philosophy of the bottom 10 here, Steve, it's the old Reagan line about the liberal view of the economy. If it moves, tax it. If it keeps moving, regulate it. If it stops moving, subsidize it. Right? And that's exactly how those states try to go about even competing that way by giving out special handouts versus keeping taxes low for everyone.
Yeah, and by the way, one of the things that our buddy Arthur Laffer talks about is that there were, I think, 11 states back in 1970, not so long ago, that have adopted income taxes, including New Jersey, and things just getting worse and worse and worse there. By the way, we have a lot of listeners in Connecticut. What is the ranking of Connecticut?
I'm glad you asked. So they have broken down into the bottom 5 here at number 46. And that's a horrible ranking for a state that, as you know well, up until Washington State's huge economic malfeasance by passing the income tax this year, Connecticut had been the most recent state to adopt a state income tax in the 1990s and had been one of the most competitive states in the country before that. And here we find themselves all the way down in the bottom 5 now.
Yeah, well, it's so interesting because 2 of the richest states in the country, for 200 years were Connecticut and New Jersey, and they're just slipping. They're losing their best people. They're losing their businesses. And of course, New York State was one of the richest states. I mean, they're still high income, but it is slipping away. Now, you mentioned Bernie Sanders. How is Vermont?
Not very much better than New Jersey and New York. Vermont coming in at number 48 this year. They do have a Republican governor there, Phil Scott, who's been trying to make some important reforms. He's got enough in the legislature to back him up on some of his vetoes. So he's been stopping things from getting worse in recent years. And I think there's no surprise that Vermont actually did improve a spot this year up to 48th from 49th because at least they've begun to stop some of the worst of the bleeding.
Well, it's funny that I don't know if it's funny, but it is ironic that Vermont is number 48 because one of my favorite presidents, Calvin Coolidge, I believe was the governor of Vermont. I know he was one of those northeastern states. It was either Vermont or Maine that he was governor at before he became president. And to think of that he was a slasher of taxes, caused the great boom in the 1920s, and it's sort of ironic that now you've got these crazies that are running the state and the legislature. And then what about our friends out on the West Coast, on the left coast there, like the Oregon and California?
Well, just in case anybody was nervous that California wouldn't get mentioned in a negative light here in the bottom 5, California did come in at 47th this year, so in that worst cohort of states. Oregon is quite close to the bottom 10 at number 40. Then, of course, you have states like Rhode Island, Maryland, Hawaii, Maine, and Illinois rounding out the bottom 10. So it's probably not a lot of surprises. Maine has probably done the best of any of those states in terms of kind of the economy because, it's less bad than many of the other states in the Northeast, and it's got a beautiful climate, and people love to go up and vacation and spend time there. But the rest of these states are really hemorrhaging jobs and individuals, people leaving those states, and, of course, evaporating their tax base at the very same time.
Now, my home state, I'm embarrassed to admit this on air, but my home state right now, I mean, I'm from Illinois. Back then, Illinois, when I was growing up, wasn't so bad. But now I live in Maryland. We have high taxes in Maryland. In fact, I could buy a house in Florida and pay the mortgage just by the money I'd save from not paying income taxes in Maryland. But where does Maryland rank?
Well, yeah, Maryland is in the bottom 10 at 42nd. And so that wasn't always the case. It's a state that continues to raise taxes. And Governor Wes Moore's platform is to really reverse course from Larry Hogan, who gave us, 8-year reprieve from some of the worst of the progressive policies in Maryland. And Wes Moore is unfortunately going back to kind of the liberal basics for Maryland and looking for more ways to raise taxes. And he blew through a massive surplus, as you know, Steve. Governor Hogan had accumulated a massive government surplus, and Governor Moore comes in and has spent that. And now, of course, shortfall means to the progressive left, they just need to go back and ask for more from hardworking taxpayers, unfortunately.
So I wrote one of the chapters in our report, which is called Rich States, Poor States, of which Jonathan Williams was the editor and lead author of that report. And what I said in my chapter, folks, was that what the phenomenon that is going on that we're seeing repeated almost year after year is that these blue states, they have very, very high taxes. People are leaving, as you just said, Jonathan. People are voting with their feet and moving away from the high taxes, and that depletes the tax base of these states like New York and Vermont and Connecticut and New Jersey. So then they have a budget problem, and so instead of cutting the spending, they raise taxes again, and they're in this kind of vicious cycle. And so what states like Florida and Texas and Tennessee and Utah are doing is basically just hemorrhaging the tax base of these states. And yet they keep digging themselves into deeper holes.
Well, they really do. I mean, it's kind of, as Arthur Laffer would like to say, it's not rocket surgery. It's basic economics and budgeting 101 that you can't spend more than you have. And that's, I mean, the key differential, I think, between the states at the top is they're growth-oriented. They keep spending limited. It allows them to cut taxes more, become more growth-oriented, and they have that positive cycle at the top. And then you have that vicious cycle at the bottom of higher taxes drives out the tax base, which then has deficits and then higher taxes. I mean, if you had to summarize rich states, poor states, and how these groups of states really do, in many cases, cluster at the top and the bottom and end up stuck there unless they rethink the way they do business, that's a great way to think about it.
One last question I have about this year's Rich States, Poor States. Which state has made the most progress in terms of improving their policy, and which state has moved in the wrong direction the most?
Well, that's a very important question, and this is a kind of pains me as a University of Michigan fan to admit this, but it's the Buckeye State that's the real comeback story in Ohio.
Oh, really?
And and they just were the big winners in this year's edition of the report, moving up 10 spots just this year from 25th to 15th, and that was because of the flat tax that they just put into law. Right. This is the first tax year that it's effective, and Steve, you know what the rate is? It's only 2.75%.
That's amazing.
Under 3% flat tax. And when we started in the first edition of Rich States, Poor States, when they had a Democrat governor, it was a very different state politically, as we know, back in 2007. Ohio was at 47th for economic outlook. So they've gone from 47th all the way up to 15th in this current edition. So they get the big award for the turnaround story.
And which was the word? Which lost the most ground?
Well, two I'd like to mention. One is here in the Commonwealth of Virginia on the other side of the Potomac River, which I used to call the freedom-loving side of the Potomac in Virginia. I'm afraid that we are going to become Maryland South here very soon under Governor Spanberger. I think the Committee to Unleash Prosperity had a very good ad I saw recently on the Spanberger tax increases, and calling out that as just economic lunacy. There's been efforts to try to repeal right to work. So here it was not many years ago. Virginia was number 3 in Rich States, Poor States. Today, Virginia is now really all the way down at below average, pushing the 30s in Rich States, Poor States. And then Colorado was once upon a time number 2 in Rich States, Poor States, and now has fallen this year dramatically and is now at its all-time worst ranking of 29th for economic outlook.
Well, Jonathan, those are states that need to get back on the right track. Again, to just tell you the headline of this report, folks, New York State has again come out the worst state for business, for economic development. And if you want to pay high taxes, move to New York. If you want to stop paying high taxes, get out of New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. Jonathan Williams, thanks so much for joining on a Saturday. And we will be right back, folks. This is The More Money Show.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. You know those friends who support your preference for podcasts over music on road trips? That's the energy State Farm brings to insurance. With over 19,000 local agents, they help you find the coverage that fits your needs, so you can spend less time worrying about insurance and more time enjoying the ride. Download the State Farm app or go online at statefarm.com. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back. This is The More Money Show, folks. I'm economist Steve Moore. Thank you for joining. Hoping you're having a great weekend. I want to bring up 2 quick issues before the end of the hour. The first issue I want to bring up is energy policy, because that is front and center with our economy right now. Everybody's angry about paying $4 or $5 a gallon for gas. And if you live in California, you may be paying as much as $6 a gallon. And incidentally, the 2 states where gas prices are really high among many are in California and New York. And I find that to be puzzling. Obviously, prices are up because of the mayhem that's going on in the Middle East with the Strait of Hormuz. We got to get that open, and we will. We will get that open. Trump will get that done. But why is it that New York and California are paying so much for gas? Because both of these states are actually well endowed with energy, with oil and gas resources. Now, some of you may be scratching your head if you're in New York City saying, New York State has oil and gas? Yes, you do. And for those of you on the West Coast, you know that maybe other than Texas and maybe Oklahoma and maybe Alaska, the state that has the most energy resources is California. I mean, you have trillions of dollars of oil and gas, much of it offshore, some of it in the mountains of California. And there's no reason you cannot safely do offshore drilling and get billions of dollars for your schools to balance your budget, reduce your income taxes, and think about all the jobs that would be associated with that. It makes no sense that California is running out of energy. It would almost be like, Alaska running out of ice. It doesn't make any sense. So go after your own resources. Stop complaining about $6 a gallon gas. And one of the reasons it's so expensive in California is they went all in on this crazy climate change thing. And then they said, we're going to change the temperature of the planet by paying $6 a gallon for gasoline. I tell you, folks, that's not going to change China's position. They're going to keep emitting more and more greenhouse gases into the air every single day. So then the state of New York, where this flagship station, WABC, New York has a lot of energy resources, especially upstate. By the way, a lot of energy in the Northeast is provided by Niagara Falls. I don't know if you're aware of that, but hydropower is a great way to get electric power, and thank good for Niagara Falls. But you also are on the what's called the Utica Shale. And that shale goes up into New York. And so in Pennsylvania, they're getting rich off of drilling and selling that oil. And yet New York, which is just right on the other side of the Utica Shale, does not get any of it because they've outlawed drilling. How stupid is that? Are these people insane? That means, you know what they're doing in Pennsylvania? They're drilling down right on the Pennsylvania-New York border. They're drilling down and they're going horizontal because the new things now with the drilling, is that they can now drill horizontally. And so they're drilling down in Pennsylvania on the border, and then they're drilling horizontally underneath New York, and they're taking out all your oil and gas. And then the money doesn't go to New York, it goes to Pennsylvania. That's how stupid your politicians are in Albany. So why give that money to Pennsylvania? They're going to drain you of all these pools of oil and gas that lie beneath the ground in New York because you just won't get involved in drilling because you're a real environmentalist and you care about climate change. Well, I tell you, it's not making, all you're doing is impoverishing your own citizens. So I find that really outrageous that the New York politicians are intentionally keeping the state poor, because the states that are doing really great right now are states like Texas and states like Oklahoma and the Dakotas and so on that are using oil. Pennsylvania is a good one. West Virginia has a lot of oil and gas. It used to be one of the poorest states. It's climbing up the economic ladder. So use your energy resources, folks. Now, that means using everything. How about nuclear power? Why not build nuclear power plants in California and New York and New Jersey? Now, I know some plants are being built. And by the way, I'm not in favor of any particular form of energy over others. I just want to use what works. And I think nuclear power would be a very good supplement to our oil and gas and coal. By the way, coal is also a great way to get electricity. I mean, my God, folks, this country was built on coal. We wouldn't have had the auto industry. We would not have had electric power. We would have not had the steel industry if it had not been for coal. They powered the future of this country and the past, and we should continue to use our coal. We have clean coal in this country. We have the cleanest coal in the world. And by the way, no, we can't do that because of climate change. And look, we've reduced the amount of pollution from coal plants by 80%. We've done an amazing job. So we've learned how to mine for coal, burn the coal, and do it in an environmentally friendly way. Meanwhile, while we shut down our coal plants in the United States, foolishly, in states like Wyoming and states like my home state of Illinois has coal, West Virginia has coal, Ohio has coal, those states are not drilling and mining for those resources. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, China, as we sit here, is building like 25 new coal plants. In fact, they build like 1 or 2 new coal plants every month in China. So they don't care about climate change in China. Are you kidding me? Does anybody actually think that President Xi in Beijing cares about climate change? He doesn't give a damn about climate change. He's trying to take over the world. And as Trump would say, he is laughing behind our back. He is laughing behind our back that the Americans are so stupid they're not using their energy resources and getting all those energy dollars to China, which has huge energy demands. We're going to double to triple our energy demands over the next 15 years because of robotics, because of AI, data centers, all these amazing inventions that are coming. We're not going to be able to achieve any of this if we don't have the power to do it. That's why this issue is so critical to America. We can use wind power. We can use solar power. That can provide maybe 10% of our energy needs, but it's not going to provide 100%. I guarantee you, we're not going to have this revolution in the digital age without having very plentiful and very affordable forms of energy. That is my lecture today. You can go to our Unleashed Prosperity site and you can see the statistics on this. We still get today, despite wasting over $400 billion on green energy, we still get 75 to 80% of our energy from good old-fashioned oil, gas, coal, and nuclear power. We got to use it all, use it everything, because one lesson we've learned, right? We learn this again in 2026. We cannot depend on the Middle East. They are not a reliable source of energy. We want to be, as Trump would say, once I told him we could be energy self-sufficient, and he wagged his finger at me and said, Steve, I don't want America to be energy efficient. I want America to be energy dominant. And we're on the way to do that. Okay, folks. Thank you so much. We are at the end of our first hour. We've got a great second hour for those affiliates that pick up the show for the second hour. This is the More Money Show, and we will be back in 3 minutes.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Trading at Schwab is now powered by Ameritrade, bringing you an expanding library of education with even more ways to sharpen your trading skills. Access new online courses, insightful webcasts, articles, engaging videos, and more, all curated just for traders. Plus, guided learning paths with content designed to fit your unique interests. No sifting to find exactly what you need, so you can spend your time learning to trade brilliantly. Learn more at schwab.com/trading.
Unlike other AI, Slackbot lives in Slack. It understands you, your team, and your work, so you can ask it for help with anything.
Can I ask it to summarize client feedback?
Yes.
Can I ask it to find time for a meeting?
Absolutely.
Can I ask it to turn our meeting notes into a launch plan?
Sure.
Can I ask it to call me the boss?
Actually, you can.
The balls.
See how Slackbot can turn you into
the balls
at slack.com/meet-slackbot.
Refreshing wild cherry cola meets smooth cream. The treat you deserve. Pepsi Wild Cherry and Cream. Treat yourself.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome, folks, to the second hour of the More Money Show. Appreciate you tuning in on this Saturday afternoon. This show wouldn't work without you, so thank you so much. I know we have so many loyal listeners, and we have a great ratings for the show, so it wouldn't be this way without you. I always say we have smart listeners, and I know that because we take your calls. Not taking your calls this week because we just have a packed agenda, but next week I will take your calls as we normally do on the More Money Hotline. But I want to start with a couple of issues that we've been covering in our More Money Hotline. And by the way, you all should get that. Just go to unleashprosperity.com and sign up for free. But these are some amazing statistics. So the other day I was reading, of all places, the Washington Post editorial page. And for, in the last 50 years, the Washington Post editorial page has been very left-wing. And then when Jeff Bezos took over, he changed the rules a little bit a few years ago and said, let's be more centrist. Let's give both sides of the of the argument, not just be left on every issue, which I applaud him for. And so now I believe the Washington Post editorial page is a lot better. It's not the Wall Street Journal by any means, but it has improved. And so they had this amazing piece that I want to call to your attention, because the title of the editorial was America's Income Tax is Progressive. Let me say that again. I'm reading from the editorial right now. America's income tax is progressive. And then the subtitle of this is, the rich already pay more than their fair share. The rich already pay more than their fair share. That's not Steve Moore talking. That's not Art Laffer. That's not Larry Kudlow. That's not supply-siders like myself who've been saying this for 30 years or 40 years. It is the Washington Post. Now, they happen to talk about some of these statistics, which are amazing. I'll just give you one that I find amazing. Those Americans who make more than $500,000, which is, by the way, that's maybe as many as about 5% of the American public make more than $500,000 because we're all getting richer. They earn 25% of all the income in the economy are made by people who make over $500,000. By the way, that includes, the Warren Buffetts of the world and the Bill Gates of the world, and it includes the Elon Musk of the world. So they have a quarter of all income, and yet they have 25% of the income, but they pay 50% of the taxes. So that's pretty amazing. That's pretty progressive. In other words, they pay twice their share of income in taxes that other people do. So I'm not done yet. That's just one statistic. Some of these others are pretty amazing. How about people who make over $1 million? So people over $1 million, and by the way, there are more millionaires every day in America. God bless this great country. It's the one country you can literally come into this country with only the shirt on your back and become a millionaire. I don't think there's any place else on the planet where that happens very often. It happens all the time in the U.S. So the millionaires have 17% of the total income pie. 17% are the millionaires. By the way, I'm surprised it's only that amount. I would have thought it was a lot higher than that. So they have about 1/5 of the millionaires. But by the way, that includes the billionaires, right? And the trillionaires once Elon Musk gets there. But their share of income tax is almost twice that, almost 33%. So we have a progressive system. Now, let's take people who make less than let's take people who make less than less than $75,000. That's 20% of the population, roughly 20%. Those people with incomes less than $75K pay 8% of the income tax. 8%. So they're paying half as much as their quote fair share, and the rich paying twice as much as their fair share if you were to just put it on a level basis. Those are extraordinary numbers. Now, I'm going to make the case to you that when you get somebody who's rich, like an Elon Musk, or like my friend, I was friends for many years with one of my mentors, a man I loved, I adored this man, was Fred Smith. He was the CEO of FedEx. He created that business out of nothing. One of the most incredible logistical miracles of all time to provide packages all over the world overnight. I don't know how he did it. You know the story that when he presented this at Harvard Business School, he got a C because some people said, it's a great idea. It'll never work. It'll never work. Well, it worked. He became a billionaire. He created tens and tens and tens of thousands of jobs, increased the GDP of the world by having these packages delivered in all the capital equipment. I mean, think of what Fred Smith did for our great country. May he rest in peace. But people like Fred Smith, and he became a billionaire, and by the way, he's very generous. He gave money to a lot of causes, including my nonprofit group, and just a wonderful, wonderful man. But his business, 90% of the benefit of that business went to other people, not to him. So when people say the rich aren't paying their fair share, what are they talking about? We want more rich people. I aspire to be rich. I think most of you listening to the show aspire to be rich. Now, we're not all going to be rich. That's the wonders of a free market system. Some people will have great ideas and they'll be rich. Some people won't. Luckily, we don't have too many poor people in this country, but we do. But tearing down the rich is not the way to make poor people rich. what we want to do is make poor people richer, not rich people poorer. You see what I'm saying? We don't want to tear down the people who make this country great, whether it's the Henry Fords or the Thomas Edisons or the J.P. Morgans. They were the people who built this country, just like Fred Smith did and just like Elon Musk is doing. I mean, you look at what's going on in space right now. I mean, is that the most spectacular thing you've ever seen? Just incredible. Look what's happening in robotics, where I make the estimate that within 10 years, every one of us is going to have our own little robot that will do everything for you, make your coffee, make your bed for you, drive you to work, do your mathematical calculations. All of these things can be done by robots, which will make life on Earth better. It'll mean, people in wheelchairs will be able to rise out of their wheelchairs and walk. People who are blind will have eyesight. I mean, the future is going to be incredible. But that doesn't happen by accident. It happens because we have great entrepreneurs, we have great inventors, and when they do something that's great, they should be rewarded. I mean, the fact that Michael Jordan was the greatest basketball player who ever lived, think of the joy that he has brought to everyone who had the opportunity to see him play basketball at a level that we've never seen before. So we reward excellence. That's the American dream. That's what makes America great. It's why everyone wants to come to America. There's an old saying that 90% of the people who want to leave their home country, and by the way, it takes a lot of guts to get up and leave the country you were born in. I mean, you've got to have a lot of adventurism to do that. 90% of the people who come to this country do not come with massive amounts of money. They don't. Some do. But many of them literally and figuratively only have the shirt on their back and not a lot of money in their pockets. And yet it's extraordinary how immigrants do. We were talking earlier on the show about the magnificent seven companies like Microsoft and NVIDIA and Amazon, et cetera, and Apple, of course. And 3 of those 7 companies were founded by immigrants. Did you know that? So these companies would not exist if it had not been for immigrants who came here. So don't punish people for being successful. We want them to be the beam of freedom and economic opportunity. And that's the way we'll get rich. That's why your governor in California, your governor in New York, your governor in Connecticut, and your governor in New Jersey are wrong when they say punish the rich. And the worst on this is Mayor Mondami, who just passed another tax on the rich. You're not going to have taxes, the rich people to be there. You're not going to be able to fleece sheep if the sheep have left. And that, unfortunately, is what is happening in America. So that's why I'm for the flat tax. I'm for economic opportunity. I want a future where every single America has the opportunity to get rich. Nowhere else in the world does that exist, but this great land of ours. Let's keep it great. And that's my message for this afternoon, and we've got great guests lined up, so do not change the channel. We will be right back in 2 minutes.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show. So privileged to have on the line with us now one of the geniuses of the financial markets and a good friend, by the way, as well. I'm talking about Rob Arnott, who is the chairman of Research Affiliates and has been made a lot of money for a lot of people over the years. So, Rob, thanks so much for joining the More Money Show.
Delighted to be here.
So let's see. You've got the fundamental index. What is that, by the way?
Oh, fundamental index is an idea we pioneered back in 2004, which quite simply takes the view that why on earth would you want to choose stocks just because they're expensive and worth a lot, big market value, and then own more of them proportional to what their valuation multiples are? If a stock doubles, why should you have twice as much of your money in it? Why not take profits and rebalance? And so fundamental index simply asks the question, how big is the underlying business? Let's choose stocks that are a big enough business, let's say in the top 500 or 1,000 largest businesses, and then let's weight it by the size of its business. The beauty of that is that if a stock soars and its underlying fundamentals don't, then you're going to say, thanks for the nice gain. Let's take some profits. Let's do some rebalancing. People rebalance with their asset allocation. Why not within their equities?
So I have a
the
question.
idea has been live over 20 years.
Yeah. So just a quick question about that. I of course want to talk to you about policy, but just because I'm kind of not nearly as knowledgeable about these markets as you are. So if you do that, if you're rebalancing, do you have to take a capital gains when do you have to sell some of your stock? How does that work?
Yes, you will have to take some capital gains, but there are ETFs that wind up with ETFs. The rebalancing is done in a fashion that's embedded within the ETF, and that doesn't trigger those gains taxes. So there are ETFs based on fundamental index offered by Schwab and by Invesco. Really, close over $100 billion is invested using these ideas, and those funds have had essentially no capital gains taxes in 20 years of history. It's really cool.
So you were kind of a revolutionary here with this whole idea. How has it performed?
That's a nuanced question. It's a nuanced question because if you weight companies according to the size of the business, not according to its market value, you have a value tilt. Companies that are trading at frothy multiples, you'll have less than the stock market. You'll underweight. And the result is that when value is winning, we win. When value is losing, we have a headwind, and sometimes don't. So relative to value indexes, the performance has been absolutely relentless, winning in 15 out of 20 years by an average of 2 to 2.5% per year.
Amazing. That's a lot. That's a lot.
Leaving you with 50% more wealth than if you invested in a conventional cap-weighted value index. So it's an innovation I'm really proud of.
You should be. Can we change gears, Rob Arnott, and talk about policy? Because that's how you and I met.
Sure.
You're pretty much a libertarian. I'm pretty libertarian myself. I want government as small as possible. So that means I want taxes low. And I'm also a apostle of the Laffer curve, which, as you know, means that if tax rates get too high, they can be very counterproductive. Would you agree with that premise?
Absolutely. I read an article just a couple days ago, which referred to the discredited Laffer curve. There's nothing discredited about it. It's simple fact.
It's common sense.
If your tax rate is zero, the tax revenues will be zero. If your tax rate is 100%, your tax revenues will be zero because nobody will do any work.
That's right.
If your taxes are 50%, you're going to get 50% of something that will be the total amount of work will be less than if taxes are zero, but the revenues will be much higher than if taxes are 0 or 100. That's all the Laffer curve says. It's self-evident. Same thing applies, by the way. There's a Laffer curve for tariffs. There's a Laffer curve for everything.
States face a Laffer curve, right?
They sure do, and it's actually a tougher one than most people realize, given that state and local taxes aren't deductible for high net worth people any longer.
They're partially, but not completely. They brought back some of it, but not a lot. Yeah.
If you're upper middle class, you probably benefit from the tax deduction. If you're affluent, if you're wealthy, especially if you're a billionaire,
it doesn't help.
It doesn't do you any good at all. Right. And so the mathematics of the tax are fascinating. Let's take Seattle as an example. I mean, Washington State as an example.
Yes.
They just imposed a politically popular but seeming to my untrained eyes unconstitutional under the state constitution. But their Supreme Court ruled it's okay. 9.9% tax on any income above $1 million. Now, you might think, gosh, anyone who's making over $1 million, what do they care if you just take a tenth of it?
Right.
Firstly, they do care, and they might think about moving. Think of all of the.
By the way, you just to
that,
interrupt for a second, Rob. When I first met you, you were living in heaven. You were living, I think, near Laguna Beach, one of the most beautiful places on the planet, in a wonderful house. I always loved visiting you. But you now live, in Miami?
Miami Beach. So I split my time about 2/3 Miami Beach, 1/3. Miami Beach in summer is not fun. So I go back.
But you're not paying. You're not paying California taxes any longer, right? I mean,
proportional to the time I spend there, yes.
Oh, I see. Okay, got it.
So I pay a little bit of California tax. But going back to the Seattle example, let's suppose you're in the top bracket. And you are paying 40 cents on the dollar to the federal government. People think it's 37, but there's hidden taxes that take it a little above 40. So you're paying 40%. Now, with the billionaire tax, you're now going to be paying 50%. 10 to the state, 9.9, and 40 to the feds. Okay, who's going to move over a 10% hike in taxes? Well, think of it a different way.
Because I would say 10% is not, a huge increase in the tax.
It's not a get me out of here difference.
Yeah, right.
But in Seattle, you now would be able to keep 50 cents on the dollar instead of 60. You can move to Texas or Florida, or if you feel adventuresome, to Anchorage, and have your income tax go to zero. You can go from 50 cents keeping 50 cents on the dollar to keeping 60 cents on the dollar. That's not a 10% difference. That's a 20% difference.
Ah, right. So your after-tax income has gone up by 20%.
Right. And if Mamdani gets his way, the New York City top bracket will be a ballpark of 18%. So who's going to move from the business capital of the world to, let's say, Miami Beach over 18%? Well, it's not 18%. You take in New York City, if the higher taxes are embraced, your billionaire is going to keep 42 cents on the dollar, and they could keep 60 cents on the dollar. That's a raise of 40%
in their tax.
So, no, in their take-home pay.
Oh, I mean, I'm sorry, in the amount of money that they receive, right? That's huge.
Yeah. So is a billionaire going to leave New York over an 18% tax? Well, it'd be damn tempting because that's a lot. But will they move for a 42% raise? Quite possibly, yes. And this is why Kathy Hochul recently begged billionaires in Palm Beach to come back and do their patriotic duty of paying New York taxes for the wonderful programs they have. You can debate whether the programs are as good as she thinks they are, but you can't debate the simple math that you make 42% more if you leave. And so that's the math that the progressives really need to give some serious thought to, because unless you want to lose your tax base, rethink it.
Yeah. Well, we want to do that analysis that you've done for all the high-tax states because it's a fascinating way to look at it. And I think it maybe open up the eyes of people like Kathy Hochul. Yeah. We've got just...
I know somebody who's putting together a calculator for exactly that. And I'll loop you in. I'll put you in touch with them if you're interested.
So one last question. We just got a couple minutes left. I'm talking to Rob Arnott from Research Affiliates, one of the masters of financial markets, but a great economist as well. So, but this is more a philosophical question, if I may, Rob. I mean, what is going on in America, especially on the left, where it's just soak the rich, eat the rich, hate the rich. They have so much money, just take it from them. Since when do we vilify people who are successful and employ? I mean, you've gotten rich, but think of the people. I just think it's sad too. What's going?
Well, here's the way I think about it, I have a lot of personal progressive friends, and I have a lot of personal progressive instincts myself. I think helping the poor is a wonderful thing. Sure. I think vilifying the rich is stupid because unless you get rich because of corruption or crime, The only way to get rich is to give people what they want, is to give people a product that they want at a price that they want. You're making the world a better place. So instead of a politics of envy or a politics of anger and hatred, why not a politics of gratitude? I mean, I'm personally deeply grateful to Jeff Bezos and deeply grateful to Bill Gates and so forth for all of their contribution to make the world a better place. I'm not angry that they are worth 1,000 times what I'm worth. It doesn't bother me in the least.
Right.
I applaud their success. I applaud their achievements, and I think it's a wonderful thing that we're in a country where if you produce something that people love and want and need, that you can be rich from that. I think we should be grateful, and I think they should happily pay their fair share of taxes, which they're already paying. They're already paying more than their fair share.
Let me kind of amplify that message, because it's very important. We've been looking at the research on this. So you've got somebody like Elon Musk. The rumors are that he could be the world's first trillionaire. I don't know if he's ever going to get there, but he's
pretty high odds of that. I mean, he's already 2/3 of the way there.
Okay, so here's the point I'm making. The studies show that, millionaires and billionaires or inventors, people who start businesses as you have, as Elon Musk has done, as Bill Gates, that I don't know if you're familiar with this, Rob, but the estimates are that over 90% of the gain of that business or that invention go to other people, not Elon Musk or Bill Gates.
That's exactly right.
So if he's a billionaire, that means his benefit to mankind is $10 billion.
To succeed, you have to, unless it's through crime or corruption, you have to deliver what customers want. You have to have happy customers. If you don't have happy customers, you don't have a business, and you'll never achieve the kind of success that these folks have achieved. I think what they've done to change the world, the Magnificent Seven are all U.S.-based companies.
Amazing.
And they've all done magnificent things. I applaud SpaceX. I applaud Tesla. I applaud Amazon and Google. And these are fantastic organizations that have done great things for the world. And to be angry that the people got very rich ignores the fact that they're producing a product that people think is well worth the price.
And by the way, the people who are angry about that tend to be people who have never produced anything in their life, like the politicians. So, Rob Arnott, thank you so much. I'd love to have you on in a few more weeks. I love our conversations. That's Rob Arnott from Research Affiliates. This is The More Money Show, and we'll be right back.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. This is The More Money Show on WABC. Thank you so much for joining on this Saturday afternoon. My next guest is Tom Pyle, who is a good friend. We actually share office space in Washington, D.C. He runs the Institute for Energy Research, does amazing work on energy policy. Probably one of the foremost authorities on energy policy in the country. So, Tom, thanks so much.
Always a pleasure, Steve. Thanks for having me back.
So, boy, nobody's talking about energy these days, right? You're not busy at all.
No, there's nothing going on.
This is the issue of the day. So let's start. I'm going to ask you a question that I've probably been asked 100 times in the last. I'm sure you've been asked 200 times this question. So people don't understand why it is they're paying higher gas prices when America is a net exporter of oil, right? And so that's, I think, the first time that's happened in decades. So I'm not very good at explaining that to people, and they don't get it, and they think we're getting ripped off by the energy. Yeah. So how do you defend them? And why are we paying $4 and $5 a gallon at the gas tank?
Well, the primary reason is because ultimately oil is a global commodity, and when the price goes up globally, then every price rises around the world.
It's like gold.
Yes.
If the price of gold goes up, it goes up everywhere.
Absolutely. Okay. And we are, a net exporter of oil. But the funny thing is, or the tricky thing is that our refiners in the United States are geared for a specific type of crude. It's heavier. They call it heavy sour. And we actually import most of that from Canada, Venezuela, and some in the Middle East.
Wait, we import the oil?
We import a lot of the oil we use for our refineries. Because
what happens to the oil that is built here?
We export a lot of that.
Oh, before it's refined.
Yes.
Oh,
we
I
export
see.
the crude and the crude derivatives from the Permian
Basin. That doesn't
Basin.
even make any sense. If I may, again, I don't understand this. But why wouldn't we just refine it here? In other words, why are we importing oil from other countries and refining it and exporting the oil we produce here? That doesn't seem
because the simple answer is the refineries have not caught up to the ability to produce. We have a new refinery coming in Texas.
Okay, in Texas.
And they're going to be taking 99% of the crude oil from the Permian Basin.
Wow.
And so that's what needs to happen.
When will that be brought online?
I'm guessing it's probably a 5 or 6 year time horizon.
So some people say that the oil companies are making windfall.
I mean, oil companies are doing what they have to do. Yeah. The biggest expense in the gallon of gasoline is the cost of crude oil. And when that cost rises, so does the cost of gasoline. It's a direct relationship.
It's like saying, the guy who's selling a cup of water in the desert, look at all the profit he made on that one. So in other words, they were sort of paying them to have the supply in these kind of
exactly.
So they have. And there, by the way, I remember talking to our friend Harold Hamm, who is the inventor, one of the inventors of shale revolution. And I talked to him back in January. He said, if we're shutting down our rigs because the oil price is so low, we can't make money. So it's almost like you have to make the hay when the sun shines.
I call the price of oil sort of like a Goldilocks phenomenon. Right. If the price is too high, then it's not good for consumers. Mm-hmm. It's good for companies. But if the price is too low, it's great for consumers, but terrible for companies. And so you got to find that just right price.
What do you think that is?
It's generally speaking, it's been higher in the past, but now it's in the $50, $65 range. People can do pretty well on the higher end of that scale.
Are we running out of oil in this country?
Never.
We're not going to drill the last
barrel. We will never run. In the history of revising our oil estimates, they've never been revised downwards.
So I was talking earlier on the show about two of the states that have the most expensive gas, New York and California, and making the point, and I'd like you to tell me if I'm wrong about this, but these are two very energy-rich states. I mean, New York, is it the Utica?
Yes.
And then, of course, California offshore has
and onshore, huge resources.
Yeah. So they are kind of prisoners of their own policy.
100%. It's all policy related. These two states in particular have done terrible damage to their states in terms of affordability because of the policy choices that they've been making. They've banned fracking.
But they're solving the climate change.
Oh, absolutely. Governor Hochul might say differently these days, right? So.
Okay, now let's get to the Strait of Hormuz. How do you see this evolving?
Well, Iran has the largest surface area right by the strait. They have been building this sort of worst case scenario for them for years, which is if they're attacked, right, we're going to retaliate with this.
So they were ready for this.
They were ready for this?
Yeah.
The other thing is...
sorry to interrupt because I don't know a lot about this. I think listeners don't, but are they... is it mines? Is it drones? What are they doing?
All of the above. It's mines. It's the threat of blowing up a tanker.
So you don't want to bring that tanker in.
Exactly. And the insurance companies have jacked up immediately after this started. They made the insurance so cost prohibitive that it's not worth a lot of people moving that oil out. Now, fortunately, with this tenuous ceasefire, we're starting to see a little bit of movement. Right. The other thing, too, is it's interesting. The rest of we only rely on about 20% of our oil.
Yeah.
The rest of the world, Europe, especially
China,
Asia, especially.
And India are the two biggest users. Why aren't they doing anything?
Exactly. That's Donald Trump's point.
I asked everybody that question. I mean, you would think China would, although I'm told that China has huge amounts of reserves, then therefore.
They don't have as much oil as we do. And in fact, oil is probably where they're the weakest in terms of their ability to produce.
So they must be facing, the Chinese are facing, even though they have.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And you tie that to Venezuela because they got most of their oil from both Venezuela and China. And now they're really
China
sort of
doesn't
in a
really
box.
have that much energy compared to us.
They have huge coal reserves.
And
obviously the rare earths, they control 80% of the supply chain for that. But that's one of the reasons that they're perfectly happy to mandate EVs there, because it's a national security issue for them as well, because they don't have the oil to the extent that we do.
So looking out past when this crisis is over, we are now we're now the leading producer of oil in the world, which is, I just looked that number up. I think on your website, that was amazing to see. Can we continue to dominate?
100%. We have so much oil. It's just every time we look, we find it. It's onshore, Texas, New Mexico, New York, if they ever got off the rocker and did something good. Offshore in the Gulf, Alaska, offshore California, offshore the Carolinas. We have oil.
I know that a lot of our listeners are shrieking, saying, "Oh my God, we're going to pollute Santa Barbara, and we're going to, these beautiful oceans." Can we do it safely? I mean, there have been accidents, right? There was
Deepwater Horizon, sure. Let me give you an answer. Mother Nature pollutes the coastline of Santa Barbara.
A lot of it seeps out.
It's all natural. They call it the tar, there's the tar region.
So sometimes the best thing to do is to pump it out.
100%.
Wow. So it's good for the environment. You listening to this? It's good for the environment to drill. Okay, final thing. I'm talking to Tom Pyle, who is the world's energy expert at Institute for Energy Research. By the way, are you a nonprofit? Can people, how do people find out?
InstituteForEnergyResearch.org. And there's
I learned so much from anyone who's interested. So 6 months from now, we're in election day. What is your best forecast? What's going to happen? Price?
I get that question asked a lot.
No,
and if I knew the answer, I'd be really wealthy and I probably wouldn't be running this nonprofit. Right. But the answer is it really depends on what happens in Iran. If that thing gets stabilized and if we see some real actual sort of the market sees that this thing has kind of gone on the rearview mirror, then we're going to see prices come back down. It's going to be a longer horizon, but by November, it just depends on how soon we get to sort of the other side.
As I said, that was the last question, but I want to ask you one more question. I was listening to Scott Bessent, who's the Treasury Secretary, as you know, and he was complaining yesterday in his press conference. He's like, well, the price shot up when we had the crisis, and shouldn't it shoot down when the crisis is over? And you're going to have to defend the oil company.
It's always a lag. It's always a lag.
It wasn't a lag when the price was
right.
up.
It always shoots up, and it's always a lag because people buy gasoline based on the price of oil that it's going to be, not the price that it is. Okay. And that's just the way that the market works.
And then do you see a future where we don't have to be so dependent on the Middle East?
Well, we are already not, were it not for the refiners having the issue of having, to retrofit their facilities to use our oil. That's going to be a longer time horizon. And that's a problem of permitting. That's the NIMBY problem. People don't want to build things in this country. That's one of the big issues that we have to tackle.
And I want to end on one other note. And that is the question of whether or not there is a future for wind and solar. And I've always, as a free marketeer, I've made the case the worst thing we ever did with wind and solar is throw government money at it. It might have evolved even faster if we just let it alone. But do you see a future for wind and solar, and how would that work?
Absolutely, there's a future for wind and solar. To your point, though, if they had spent all this time working through the market,
right,
as opposed to chasing all that federal largesse, right, then we wouldn't be building windmills and solar panels in places where it doesn't make sense. And that's the big difference.
Tom, thanks so much for joining.
Absolutely.
That's Tom Pyle for Institute for Energy Research. And folks, this is the More Money Show. We'll be back in 2 minutes.
The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The More Money Show with Steve Moore on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show. I'm economist Steve Moore. Thanks for joining this afternoon. A few closing thoughts. One of the great inventions of modern times, I'm going to laugh when I say this, is the credit card. The credit card. Those plastic credit cards, by the way, you don't even really need a plastic credit card any longer. I don't have one. I just have my credit card essentially on my iPhone. And so I just click it with the register, and I pay for anything I want. I hardly use cash anymore. I usually try to have a few 20s in my wallet in case I need to tip someone for helping me out or something. But we're becoming a cashless society, and more Americans have been using credit cards as a way to pay for their purchases. And this is a very fine way of doing it. It means, you don't have to walk down the street with $200 in your pocket and they come up with you with a pistol and want to take your money or your life. You can give your money because probably you're not going to have a lot of it in you. So the point I'm making is that credit cards have been an amazing convenience. They're great for everyone. They're great for the individuals who use them. They are great for the businesses, the retailers, and the merchants who get to way more sales because people can make purchases they otherwise wouldn't be able to make if they didn't have enough cash in their pocket. And, there's this kind of purchases that people make. They see something, I got to have that. If you don't have the money in your pocket, you're probably not going to run back home, get money, and come back to the store. But you will if you can flash out your credit card. So my point is that credit cards, and I'm not a shill for the credit card industry. I'm simply saying that these have been amazing inventions because when I got started in this business back in the mid to late 80s, only less than half Americans even had credit cards, especially not young people. Now, 80 to 90% of Americans have credit cards, which makes their life a lot more convenient. And it allows us to make purchases when we're in an emergency situation. So credit cards are great. And it's a great thing that we've democratized credit, that just about all Americans have credit. Not everyone, but most do. And so there's a big issue now about whether or not we should have price controls on the credit card companies and the banks that issue them. I'm not for that. You all know I'm never for price controls. I want the government out of the way of the private businesses, not in the way. But nonetheless, here's what I'm driving at. Have you noticed, folks? I've noticed this a lot lately, just in the last few months, that more and more stores, when you go into a retail shop, whether it's a restaurant, whether it's a hot dog stand, whether it is a store that's selling merchandise, there's a sign at the cash register that says, "We don't accept cash." Not, "We don't accept credit cards. We don't accept cash." I had never seen that before. I thought stores always wanted cash rather than credit cards. In fact, the merchants have always been complaining about how much the credit card companies charge them for these transactions. And yet now they're saying, no, don't give us your $50 bills or your $20 bills or your Ben Franklins because we don't want it. We don't. And by the way, the reason the stores don't want them is because there's a lot of theft at the cash registers, both from criminals who come in and try to take the money from the cash register and employees who might just steal the money from the cash register. That's not uncommon. And so you can't steal money who makes a credit card purchase. Second of all, the operating costs are much lower. You don't have to deal with cash, even if you have honest employees. You don't have to carry it to the bank and so on. Everything is done electronically. And so this makes purchasing easier and speedier. And so my point is, we are moving into a cashless society. I'm not so sure that's a great thing. I think it's a good thing, but the fact that you can't take a credit card, a cash and pay for things now, I find to be astounding. Coins are going to be gone. I don't know, folks, do you even use coins anymore? I've got a huge jar of quarters and nickels and dimes and pennies, but I don't think I'll have to take those to the bank. And they've got, those machines that roll around and count the currency and the coins. And they tell you, I have $682 worth of coins. But my point is that now I just find it ironic that these retailers who say the credit cards are charging them too much are saying we want more credit card purchases and less cash. I would not be surprised, folks, if a year to 2 years from now, no stores take cash, that we become a cashless society. And that's not such a bad thing. I don't know how you all feel about it, but I think it's probably going to make our life more convenient and less theft. But you never know. We will see. Last thing I wanted to mention before we break up for the afternoon is, you all get the hotline. I know you do because you're smart people. And we're all concerned about what is going to happen with respect to the situation in the Middle East. I'm not an expert on this. I'm an economist, but I will make a prediction to you. I believe in 3 weeks or less, we will have the Strait of Hormuz open. Commerce will be flowing through. The fertilizer will fall through. The oil will fall through. The merchandise will flow through. And that will be a game changer. We're going to see gas prices fall gradually, not hugely, but that will happen. And the crisis will have subsided. And all the people say, oh, look what Trump has done. They're going to have a little bit of egg in their face because by June, we're going to see gas prices. Remember, gas prices were the lowest ever adjusted for inflation back just in January. I mean, Trump was drill, baby, drill. We were increasing the supply. The price was falling. I don't think we'll get back to those low prices, but I'm here to tell you, I think there's an 80% probability that the price of gas at the pump will be at or below $3 a gallon in most states within a few months. And that is blessed relief. Now, opening up the straits, I'm not a military expert. I don't know how we're going to do it, but we had one really fun cartoon in our hotline the other day, which said, we finally have some help from Japan in opening up the Strait of Hormuz. And what you see in the picture is Godzilla rising out of the ocean and getting rid of all of the drones and all of the mines that would disrupt the flow. And maybe that's what we need. Maybe we need Godzilla to make the oil flow through the Strait of Hormuz. Well, that brings us to the end of our show, folks. I hope you are having a wonderful weekend. Keep the faith. That's my message for today. Larry Kudlow talks a lot about this. Keep the faith. Things are going to get better. I know this has been a rough patch. Nobody likes paying $4 and $5 a gallon of gas. No one likes going to the grocery store and paying more money for all the food that we buy. No, I'm speaking about my wife especially, who's complaining all the time about the high prices of things. But things are going to get better. Stay the course. Keep the faith. I want to thank our 3 outstanding guests this afternoon on the show. Rob Arnott from Research Affiliates, Tom Pyle from the Institute for Energy Research, and Jonathan Williams from ALEC, who did an amazing job telling us what's going on in America today. We will be back, folks. Same bad time, same bad channel on the More Money Show on WABC next week.
Thanks for listening to More Money with Steve Moore. You can hear More Money with Steve Moore Saturday afternoons at 1. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?